Global shipping just got hit. The Maersk Gibraltar, a 10,000 TEU container vessel, was struck by an Iranian security boarding party just outside the Strait of Hormuz. And within hours, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a decree that has paralyzed the global economy. Ladies and gentlemen, the rules of the ocean just changed forever. What's unfolding right now is something the Pentagon didn't expect for at least another decade. Iran isn't just threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz anymore. They are now charging a security toll of $1 million per vessel for safe passage. Donald Trump is facing a crisis that makes the 1973 oil embargo look like a minor inconvenience. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and IRGC Commander Hossein Salami have effectively turned the world's most vital maritime artery into a private toll road. Hit subscribe right now if you want the truth behind the headlines. We cover what the mainstream media won't, every single day. Turn on notifications so you never miss when we expose the next phase of this global conflict. Do it now. Here's the sequence. On April 13, 2026, at 4 a.m. local time, the IRGC Navy deployed 35 fast attack craft to surround the entrance of the Strait of Hormuz. This wasn't a standard naval exercise. This was the implementation of the Hormuz Sovereignty Act. According to a classified sitrep from the Pentagon obtained by the Wall Street Journal, Iran has established a Maritime Security Zone that requires every commercial vessel to pay a $1 million fee via a decentralized digital clearinghouse before entering the Gulf. Now, Donald Trump had already warned that any interference with international shipping would trigger a devastating military response. That warning? It just got cashed in. But it didn't trigger a conventional war. It triggered a hostage crisis for the global economy. The U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet is currently operating in Condition Zebra across the Persian Gulf, with the USS Abraham Lincoln and its carrier strike group positioned just 50 miles off the Iranian coast. But here's where it gets bigger than a local skirmish. See, Iran didn't just stop the ships. There are emerging reports confirmed by Reuters and Lloyd's List Intelligence of 26 Shadow Fleet tankers bypassing U.S. patrols to deliver crude directly to China under IRGC escort. The seizure of 3 South Korean-flagged vessels in the Faroe Island transit lane for non-payment. A 400% increase in hull insurance premiums for any vessel not carrying an Iranian-issued safe passage certificate. The deployment of HQ-9 long-range surface-to-air missile batteries along the cliffs of Musandam. Let that sink in. 20 million barrels of oil per day, effectively held behind a $1 million per ship paywall, $2.5 trillion in annual global trade, frozen by a regime that the establishment told us was contained by sanctions. The International Maritime Organization just issued an emergency declaration demanding an immediate cessation of these illegal levies. This isn't a regional dispute anymore. This is a total restructuring of global maritime law. And Iran is making sure the American consumer feels the cost at the pump before the week is over. Now you might be asking, why would Iran take such a suicidal risk? Why would they provoke the full might of the United States Navy by charging an illegal toll? Why would they target the very ships that keep the global economy afloat? Because Iran isn't fighting to win a naval battle they know they would lose. Iran is fighting to establish a new reality where American hegemony no longer dictates the terms of trade. When the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports began last week, understand the expanded context that the mainstream news is missing. Iran lost its last remaining tether to the legal global financial system. The Islamabad peace talks didn't just stall, they imploded. The IRGC command immediately issued a statement declaring, "If our oil does not flow, no oil shall flow without our permission." So when IRGC spokesperson Ramazan Sharif says that the Strait of Hormuz belongs to the people of the region, that tells you everything. The hardliners in Tehran are running the show. The era of strategic patience is dead, and Iran has decided this is their Karbala moment, a stand against overwhelming odds where the goal is symbolic and economic survival through total defiance. By charging $1 million per ship, they aren't just collecting revenue. They are forcing every nation on earth to choose. Acknowledge Iranian sovereignty over the strait, or face a global depression. It is a strategic checkmate designed to prove that the United States can no longer guarantee the freedom of navigation it has promised the world since 1945. Now here's the part no one in Washington wants to talk about. National Security Advisor J.D. Vance told the press 3 days ago that the U.S. Navy could clear the strait and restore order within 48 hours. But according to a leaked CENTCOM readiness assessment reviewed by the New York Times, the current U.S. naval posture in the region is designed for deterrence and localized strike operations, not the sustained protection of thousands of individual merchant ships against thousands of Iranian naval mines and suicide boats. That's a 14-day gap between the political promise of a clear strait and the logistical reality of clearing the most densely mined waterway in human history. And already, on day 4, here's what's happened. 1. The U.S. Navy attempted to escort the Maersk Hangzhou, only to be met by a swarm of 40 Shahed 136 drones, forcing the destroyer USS Gravely to expend $20 million in interceptor missiles to protect a single cargo ship. 2. Satellite imagery from Maxar Technologies shows Iran has successfully deployed smart mines that can distinguish between military hulls and commercial tankers, a capability the Pentagon previously claimed Iran didn't possess. 3. The Washington Post is now reporting that U.S. insurance giants, led by Marsh McLennan, have officially suspended coverage for any U.S.-flagged vessel entering the Gulf, effectively grounding the American merchant marine despite Navy protection. 4. A Pentagon briefing document indicates that 2 Mark VI patrol boats were harassed into international waters by Iranian electronic warfare units that jammed their GPS and communication arrays. The Wall Street Journal is now reporting that senior naval commanders are privately warning the White House that a total escort strategy is mathematically impossible. They are failing to protect the shipping lanes in too many places, too fast, and too unpredictably, and the Pentagon simply can't keep up with the sheer volume of the IRGC's Mosquito fleet. This was supposed to be a surgical blockade of the Iranian regime. That's the exact phrase Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin used with the Senate Armed Services Committee last month. But Iran turned it into an expensive, grinding war of attrition against the global supply chain. Let's zoom out, because this stopped being a U.S.-Iran standoff about 72 hours ago. China has officially moved the PLA Navy's 45th Escort Task Force, including the Type 055 destroyer Nanchang, into the Gulf of Oman after Iran announced that friendly nations would receive a 90% discount on the Hormuz toll. Russia is moving Su-35 fighter jets and S-400 missile components toward the Iranian coast. And Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov just said that any U.S. attempt to board Russian-chartered tankers will be viewed as an act of international piracy. That's 4 nuclear-armed nations now actively positioning assets against or with the Iranian blockade. 4. And the United Kingdom just suspended all British Airways flights to the region after Iran threatened to close the airspace to any nation supporting the U.S. blockade. France and Germany have followed suit. Over 1,200 commercial flights have been canceled across the Middle East and South Asia since Monday. British Petroleum and Shell have suspended all operations in the Persian Gulf until May 1st at the earliest. The European Union is scrambling to figure out a heating oil crisis now that both the Kuwaiti and Qatari LNG shipments are compromised and diverted around the Cape of Good Hope. WTI crude just touched $112.40 and is climbing. Natural gas prices in Rotterdam spiked to $65 per megawatt hour, a 40% increase in a single afternoon. The yen in Japan jumped to 165 against the dollar, a sign that capital is fleeing emerging markets at speed to hide in the perceived safety of the Swiss franc and gold. And we're on day 5. Here's what most coverage is missing. Iran knows it can't win this conflict militarily. The math doesn't work. You're facing 3 U.S. carrier strike groups, over 400 combat aircraft, and the most advanced nuclear submarine fleet in existence. Iran has an aging air force and a navy made of speedboats. That's an unwinnable equation. But Iran isn't trying to win the battle of the Strait. Iran is trying to make Donald Trump lose the American voter. Think about it. Every $1 increase in the price of oil has a domestic political impact. Every tactical setback in the Gulf becomes a massive media consequence. Every economic disruption becomes a voter pain point that Americans feel at the gas pump, the grocery store, and their utility bills. Donald Trump built his brand on America first and the promise of no more endless wars. He mocked the previous administration over the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan and the failure to deter Russia in Ukraine. And now, under his watch, gasoline is heading towards $7 a gallon in the Midwest, and the U.S. Navy is seemingly powerless to stop a third world regime from taxing the world's trade. The opposition party doesn't even need to campaign. The footage of stranded tankers and the data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics do it for them. The New York Times, which Trump has personally attacked as the enemy of the people, is going to run every single story of military overreach and economic mismanagement on a loop. And when the 2026 midterm elections come this November, Trump loses his congressional mandate, and a president without a majority is a lame duck before his second term even truly begins. Iran knows this. That's the real strategy, not naval dominance but political assassination through economic exhaustion. According to military analysts at Stratfor, historians at the Hoover Institution, and senior officials at the International Energy Agency who have weighed in, the world is currently in the most dangerous blind spot since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. There are scenarios in which a face-saving deal is reached, perhaps a temporary lifting of the blockade in exchange for the release of frozen Iranian assets in South Korea and Japan, before the worst consequences materialize. There are also scenarios in which the escalation pattern continues. The U.S. launches Operation Praying Mantis II to sink the Iranian Navy, and the conflict becomes a generational disaster that ends the era of cheap energy forever. The honest answer is, nobody knows. And I mean that literally. Every geopolitical analyst, every think tank, every intelligence agency is operating on outdated models right now. They assumed Iran would play by the old rules of deterrence. Iran has thrown the rulebook into the fire. Foreign Affairs published a piece last night saying, the West is preparing for a war of missiles, while Iran is fighting a war of bank accounts. But here's the critical point. Whatever comes after this toll crisis is going to be more complex, more radical, and far more expensive for the average American. There are already emerging reports, suggested by signals intelligence out of GCHQ, that Iran is sharing its toll technology and drone swarming tactics with other regional actors. Houthi factions in Yemen are reportedly mobilizing to implement a similar Red Sea toll. Meanwhile, an official IRGC source just announced, and I quote, "The era of free passage for the oppressors has ended." We don't know what that means. Could be a permanent change in maritime law. Could be the precursor to a full-scale invasion of the UAE islands. Could be something nobody's even considered yet. Because when a regime like Iran decides it has nothing left to lose, when it fights not for a surface goal but for its very survival, every red line disappears. Every calculation goes out the window, and every prediction becomes worthless. We are witnessing something that will reshape the Middle East, the global energy market, and the future of American naval power for a generation. And we're only 5 days in. I'm going to keep covering this as it develops, pulling from Pentagon SITREPs, Lloyd's List shipping data, and independent intelligence sources, because no single mainstream outlet is giving you the full picture. If you want to stay informed without the corporate noise, subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll be back with an updated analysis as soon as the next major development breaks in the Gulf. Stay safe out there. I'll see you in the next one.